Felios is a problem. Is this really enough? What's going on, Summoners? My name is Dan, and I'm here to bring you another meta update. This time, we're running you through everything you need to know headed into patch 10.13. In this video, you're going to find all the information you'll need for the next patch, so make sure to stay tuned. We're covering content for every role. By the way, I want to let you guys know that we're doing a giveaway for 7 annual ProGuides subscriptions and a ton of points. To have a chance at winning the prize, all you need to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel and head over to our giveaway section in our Discord. It's just a few clicks and you're all set. And for our question of the day, who is your favorite 450 cost champion? This one's to help out all the newbies out there. Let us know which budget champion is your go-to. For me, I'm gonna keep it plain and simple, and I'm gonna go with Ashe. She's a great all-around marksman who has plenty of utility and doesn't feel too easy. At the same time, she's not a super hard champion, and I like that she's the right amount of challenging. She doesn't leave me bored, but isn't difficult to frustrate me either. Let's see your guys' answers in the comment section though. I will definitely be reading them. With that said, let's jump into the video. First up, let's talk about the top lane. We got some various system changes, and the one affecting the top lane the most is the nerf to Conqueror. Certain champions are getting hit much harder than others. For those of you who weren't aware, the stat cap on Conqueror is being increased from 10 to 12, which sounds like good news until you learn that they're also nerfing how much adaptive force you gain from each stack. Top laners who either attack slower or rely on abilities with high cooldowns to build those stacks are going to suffer quite a bit. We're thinking of champions like Aatrox, Illaoi, and even Urgot. Remember that ranged champions only gain 1 stack per basic attack, so tacking on those 2 extra stacks can really make the difference in close fights. Ultimately though, this isn't because top laners were OP with Conqueror, but instead that marksmen and assassins were. What an unfortunate day, and for now, this is the lesser of 2 evils in Riot's eyes. Top laners have taken a hit for something they had no part in. Looking to the wisest individuals of our generation, I'll quote their finest words for this situation. It really be like that sometimes. In contrast, we have champions like Garen who won't feel the nerfs at all. He spins for 1 more tick and boom, the nerf ceases to exist for him. While the meta won't make monumental shifts in response to this change, I'd like to believe that some compensation buffs may be needed to specific champions in following patches. We'll have to see how hard this nerf hits, but our analysts say that at the end of the day, some champions are going to feel a little weaker, while some won't be affected at all. The top lane meta won't shift very much, but these nerfs will heavily affect the other roles. The next thing we need to talk about is Ignite in the top lane. While this is something we mentioned before, and also a topic that's been debated by top laners since the conception of League, we felt that it'd be appropriate to chime in once again. Of the 3 systems hit this patch, 2 of them involved healing, Death's Dance, and Conqueror. It doesn't take much experience this season to know that healing and sustain has become a pretty big issue in the game. While it might not be present in some games, it's absolutely dominant, oppressive actually, in the games that it is. Our only counterplay to healing is to either forfeit at the 20-minute mark or to build healing reduction. Both of these are far from ideal, as healing reduction, even for AD champions, still has a moderate price tag at 800 gold. By running Ignite, top laners can save that money and instead hit their item power spikes much faster. 800 gold saved essentially means that you can save yourself the effort of picking up 2 solo kills and an entire minion wave over your opponent. Picking up solo kills is arguably one of the best ways to snowball leads and carry games. Win lane, win game may not always be true, but let's be real here. You definitely have an easier time carrying games when you do manage to come out of the laning phase ahead. Summoner Ignite is feeling like a stronger option as each day passes, but it's definitely champion dependent as well. Fortunately, some of the strongest champions in the game thrive off of using Summoner Ignite. Champions like Garen and Volibear have built-in sustain, making teleport less of a necessity, while ones like Wukong benefit heavily from the free sustain they receive from Conqueror. Champions like these are showing better results running Summoner Ignite, so keep an open mind to the option. Finally, we want to talk about the Last Stand rune. If you're still running Coup de Grace, you definitely need to think twice about it. The pros are all running Last Stand over Coup de Grace, and for good reason. Like we said, solo queue relies heavily on a player's ability to win lane, and coming out on top during close 1v1s can easily decide the laning phase. If fights aren't close, then you're either doing something wrong, or those aren't fights you should be taking to begin with. However, the ones that do come down to just 1 more basic attack or your opponent getting away with 10 HP might be the direct result of you running the wrong rune. Coup de Grace only kicks in when your opponent hits 40% health. In contrast, Last Stand provides value the moment you fall below 60% health. Assuming fights are even, you'll gain bonus damage much earlier than you would with coup de grace. Once you fall below 30% health, you'll also gain 3% more bonus damage than you would with coup de grace regardless. Alright, that covers the top lane, so let's run you guys through the jungle next. First, let's talk a little bit about Nunu. Don't take those buffs coming next patch for granted. AP Nunu might sound troll, but you shouldn't be thinking about full AP Predator Nunu. Yes, that's definitely going to be more common and much stronger than before, but you also need to think about regular tank Nunu. They'll likely build an AP item or maybe two, just like how a bruiser jungler might build one damage item and then transition into a tankier build. Especially with a Skirmisher's Saber, a Nunu jungle with a Cinder Hulk and Liandry's Torment could really pack a punch. These AP ratio buffs are going to make Nunu, who's already a successful jungler, perform even better than before. Next, let's talk about a favorite amongst pros and elite level players. Graves is still busted, and everyone is abusing him for free LP gains. However, things might be different next patch. Death's Dance is receiving a nerf, and ranged champions will only be able to store 10% of the damage they take instead of 20%. 20% was quite generous, especially for Graves, as it gave him plenty of time to try and heal back up in the Death's Dance timeframe. While we don't expect Graves players to stop building Death's Dance, it's definitely important to know that Graves will be much squishier next patch. If you struggled with attempting to one-shot him, then you'll be happy to know that it's going to be a lot easier once the next patch rolls out. Real quick, we also need to address the Graves players and junglers watching this video. If any of you have been taking Stalker's Blade on Graves for whatever reason, you absolutely must switch now. Death's Dance casts a deep safety net for Graves, but with nerfs coming its way, you'll definitely need the extra damage reduction a Skirmisher's Saber provides. Staying alive is key. If you manage to do so, you can stack up your grit and continue to become stronger as fights drag out. Finally, the last champion we want to talk about is Vi. She's about to receive a huge buff to her Q's cooldown. 40% cooldown reduction is relatively easy for Vi to build, and with it, her Q will have a projected 3.6 second cooldown in the mid to late game. You need to watch out for her, as she's going to feel so much more mobile than before as a result. A last mention that our analysts wanted to make was about dragons. We're not going to go too in-depth for this, but we just wanted to update junglers in regards to where their priorities should be for dragons. According to the data, ocean dragons are the most valuable, providing a little bit more value than mountain and infernal dragons. Cloud dragons provide the least value. Grabbing the first dragon, if it's an ocean dragon, can, pun intended, change the tides of battle in your favor. If you manage to nab multiple dragons, the data becomes a little bit trickier to digest, but essentially, cloud dragons remain the least relevant. Not every champion relies on their ultimate, so it definitely makes sense that this would be the case. With that covered, let's jump into the mid lane next. What have we got cooking in the mid lane? Well, first off, Phase Rush and Ghost are causing a pretty big fuss in the mid lane. Control mages are running these quite often because of the ridiculous amount of safety it provides them. After scrambling out of danger, control mages can continue providing a ton of utility for their team. While also dealing insane amounts of damage, they can push opponents out of specific choke points, creating value in a way that can't necessarily be evaluated with numbers. During the laning phase, the extra movement speed control mages gain while running either or both of these allows them to farm rather safely. Escaping ganks is much more feasible, even for immobile control mages. Ghost in conjunction with Phase Rush provides way too much movement speed, and it's basically impossible to catch up to an enemy that's faster than you and also able to run through units. You also have to consider the fact that AD assassins are receiving a conditional nerf. Conqueror won't be as effective as before on them, meaning that some players are going to switch back to Electrocute. If they don't, they'll simply deal less damage than before, and mage mid laners are definitely happy about that. The current state of the mid lane definitely gives control mages plenty of breathing room to work with. While they're not the most dominant mid lane archetype at the moment, they felt a little too risky and didn't reward players enough. After some various balance changes, they're far less risky than before, and it's easier for players to justify playing them now. In terms of trends, let's talk about Spellbook Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate in general is proving himself as one of the strongest mid laners in the game right now. In solo queue especially, he's able to abuse overextended opponents and utilize map pressure to take over game. I don't think many players underestimate him at all. He's actually one of the most popular mid laners in the game right now. He's received some buffs in previous patches, and he's finally hit a point where pros have begun spamming him. However, they're running Unsealed Spellbook, while the majority of the players is still using Electrocute. Some mid laners are running Nimbus Cloak in order to gain that same summoner ghost-like feel when casting any of their summoner spells. Unsealed Spellbook provides the ammunition for this playstyle, and you also get the opportunity to actually run Summoner Ghost every once in a while. Spellbook Twisted Fate allows for a versatile but more importantly safe playstyle so that players can consistently farm up. One last thing we want to talk about for mid laners is Syndra. She's been a staple pick for mid laners for several patches now because of her insane damage output, safety, and utility. Following 2 consecutive nerfs, it feels like she's finally going to slowly transition out of the meta. Syndra's felt a little too reliable, and it looks like her time is coming to an end soon. That's it for the mid lane, so let's talk about the bot lane now. Alright, these Death's Dance and Conqueror nerfs were definitely aimed at bot laners using them. Death's Dance will store 10% less damage for ranged champions. Conqueror also requires 2 more stacks, meaning that ranged champions are really going to struggle to build Conqueror up. Let's say goodbye to Aphelios. Okay, but not really. Aphelios is definitely going to be weaker, but it's highly unlikely that the current meta build will disappear altogether. Although Conqueror and Death's Dance are weaker on Aphelios now, he'll probably still be building the item for its ridiculous sustain. Whether Aphelios players will run Conqueror or not is up in the air, but at the very least, players should have the peace of mind that Aphelios won't be nearly as OP as he was prior to patch 10.13. These same nerfs also hit another champion, Ezreal. However, Ezreal players were finding a ton of success with the lethal Tempo Keystone, and players could easily make the switch back if the Conqueror nerfs end up being too much. In regards to the Death's Dance nerfs, they don't hit Ezreal as hard because he already builds Iceborne Gauntlet for some defensive stats. The sustain is more important for Ezreal, and while the reduction in damage storage is going to hurt, Ezreal isn't exactly the easiest champion to pick off anyway. Once again, we're going to reiterate that some bot laners are choosing to run Exhaust for themselves while allowing their supports to run Heal or Ignite instead. The reason for this is that it's easier for marksmen to peel for themselves when they have Exhaust, and also because supports will oftentimes run Cosmic Insight or Revitalize. Revitalize obviously has synergy with Summoner Heal, while Cosmic Insight provides more value on spells with longer cooldowns. Especially if you want to be able to fend for yourself, running Exhaust as the marksman is something to heavily take into consideration. Finally, let's talk about scaling in the bottom lane. It's felt really difficult to play scaling marksman as there have been a ton of bullies on the premise. We're looking at you, Kalista and Draven. Kalista is set to receive a nerf next patch, while Draven will inevitably feel a bit weaker because of the nerfs to Conqueror. 2 of the bot lane's strongest early game champions are getting hit next patch, and this should open it up to more late game oriented champions. That's it for the bottom lane, and now we'll finally wrap this all up with supports. The players hit the hardest by the upcoming Guardian nerfs are supports. Lulu, Bard, and Recon are the most noteworthy champions running this keystone, and inevitably, they'll feel a bit weaker next patch. However, this nerf is actually a revert on the number values of the keystone, and we don't expect any of these kinds of champions to fall out of the meta. Lulu and Bard are 2 of the strongest supports right now because of the insane amounts of utility they can provide. Guardian, in spite of the fact that it's getting nerfed, feels really good. The quality of life buffs it received on patch 10.12 made it feel so much more responsive and reliable. Next patch, Yumi is finally receiving the nerf she needs. Her ban rate has exceeded 60%, and the time for change has come. Yumi players are going to need to expose themselves to danger much more often if they want to continue providing the same amount of value. Her mana cost on her E is rising dramatically next patch, and thus CC-oriented tank supports are going to go all out trying to punish her. Several patches of pent-up frustration should be enough incentive for aggressive support players to try and pick off Yumi whenever she needs to regain some mana. In many cases, it won't even be feasible for Yumi players to hop off an ally even for a moment. In these scenarios, Yumi's teammates will just have to deal with the fact that she won't be able to heal them as often. Finally, we want to wrap up the sports section by talking about Xayah and Recon. They are back and they're hovering near a 51% win rate. Considering that Xayah's win rate is at 49%, you gotta really ask yourself who's getting carried here? Support difference or is it an ADC difference? We'll let you guys figure that one out for yourselves, but even in Recon's case, his win rate rises a bit when paired up with Xayah. While they're not producing the same results they did in the past, Xayah and Recon are performing at an acceptable level once again. Players that are duo queuing in the bottom lane definitely need to give this duo a go once again. At the same time, all bot laners need to be aware and not underestimate this duo. Xayah did receive some buffs to her ultimate recently, and she feels much more threatening than before as a result. The Xayah Recon level 6 power spike creates insane amounts of lane pressure, which can lead to solo kills, or simply lane pressure that can lead to easy dragon pickups. That's going to cover it for our 10.13 meta update for you guys. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and also subscribe so you can stay updated with all the different kinds of content we're releasing. Thanks for watching, guys. We here at ProGuides really appreciate it. Until next time, good luck on the Rift and happy grinding.